misinformation in the social network traveled further and deeper than truthful information. The more time that we hear misinformation, our brains will believe it because our brains aren't good at differentiating the truth from what's familiar. Alternative medicine treatments, they will often say that they're addressing a root cause, but it's a false root cause or a pseudoscientific root cause. Homeopathy violates fundamental principles in physics and pharmacology because homeopathy uses the law of minimum dose. An ingredient becomes more effective when it's diluted out of existence and that water remembers the memory of it.
To earn a fortune in fitness industry, either in diet or exercise, there is only one dictum: complicate to profit. The more you complicate, the better profits.
The Einstein effect basically means that when we hear health misinformation from a scientist or a doctor, people are more likely to believe it. The MAHA movement is alternative medicine ideology going mainstream. It's pseudoscience becoming politicized. It's incredibly dangerous. DETOX are fear-mongering. They're saying things like there are 80,000 chemicals out in the world and that my supplement protocol can help detox chemicals or substances that you need to get rid of your body, and that your liver and kidneys aren't enough and this is the product that you need to do. Those are scams. An alternative medicine practitioner spends more time with the patient. It allows them to feel seen, to feel heard.
Dr. Jonathan, you had written a beautiful book which came out, I think, last month in India. Its name is Mind the Science. I want to know the reason behind it. What's your intention? What led you to write this book? Because we are living in times of health misinformation. I want to know your why behind the book.
Thank you. Yeah, my motivation to write the book was exactly as you said. We live in a time of pervasive pseudoscience, pervasive health misinformation, and specifically as a clinical psychologist, which is what I am, I help people with mental health and mental illness. And I see so much mental health misinformation on social media, in popular culture, and just around the world, North America, just globally. And so I decided that, I treat patients every day in a hospital clinic, but I also wanted to help people in a way protect themselves from pseudoscience and misinformation in a way that I can't do clinically. And so that's why I wanted to write this book, so that I could help people try to protect themselves from the pervasive misinformation and pseudoscience that we see, so that when people hear health claims and they are offered health treatments, they can be more skeptical and more discerning and more wary of different treatments, because not all treatments are created equal. Some have evidence and science behind them, and some do not, and they can be harmful. And so that was my big motivation for writing this book.
So Mark Twain had a phenomenal quote. He said that a lie travels around the world by the time the truth just ties his laces or shoes. So we live in an age of health misinformation which just spreads through like a wildfire. And there are a lot of reasons through it. What I want to know, this particular topic of health misinformation and the cult-like following which it propagates, from your lens of a pseudoscience demystifier.
Yeah, well, there's evidence behind that quote. There was actually a scientific study that came out, and it looked at the algorithms of how Twitter works, now X, and it found that misinformation in the algorithm or in the social network traveled further and farther and deeper than truthful information. So there's actual science to back that up. And that's very scary, because there is a psychological phenomenon that we all have, and it's called the illusory truth effect, which means the more time that we hear and we see misinformation, the more likely it is that our brains will believe it, because our brains aren't good at differentiating the truth from what's familiar. And so that's a very great cause of concern.
And what are the alluring, seductive marketing gimmicks that this health misinformation providers or health influencers use to make you believe in them, which is, I think, a really big study to be, we should study them and we should inculcate this marketing gimmick so that we can propagate a truth around the same packaging.
Yeah, so that was one of the goals of my book too, was to teach the language of pseudoscientific grift, as we call it, or pseudoscientific trickery or misinformation. And that was a big message in the book, was that alternative medicine, which is, the alternative medicine is not just a set of unsupported treatments or pseudoscientific treatments. So it's not just energy healing or homeopathy or whatever pseudoscientific treatments it might be. Alternative medicine is an entire what we call ideology. It's a set of ideas, it's a narrative, it has marketing tropes or ideas and marketing propaganda tactics, as you're saying. It advertises in a way that makes people doubt and distrust mainstream medicine. And so there's a variety of those tactics and tropes that alternative medicine influencers will use. And I have lists in my book that I say, but one for example is they will often say that they, as opposed to mainstream medicine, address the root cause. And that's in contrast to mainstream medicine, who only masks the symptoms. And that's just simply not true, because mainstream medicine treatments look for the root cause all the time, and we deal with that all the time. And in fact, when you look at alternative medicine treatments, they will often say that they're addressing a root cause, but it's a false root cause or a pseudoscientific root cause. So for example, treating someone's mental illness or depression by unblocking their energy blockages, or treating a diet deficiency with a diet protocol that doesn't matter and is unsupported. So that's one trope. There's other tropes too, like calling their treatments natural or holistic and more safe. And of course, those are logical fallacies. It's the appeal to nature fallacy. There's the appeal to tradition fallacy, which is saying that because a treatment was used for thousands of years or hundreds of years, that it's therefore more effective. And again, we say that's a logical fallacy because it's simply not true. Just because a treatment has been used doesn't mean that science now has the evidence to back it up and support it.
So in your book, I had found one interesting nine-pointer pseudoscience demystifier. I want to know the 9 red flags of pseudoscience, and just explain us with the help of an example so that our viewers can understand it or grasp it more easily.
Yeah, there's 9 of them, right? So that's a lot, and I really do want people to memorize them. Maybe I'll give 3 of the maybe most important ones that people should keep their eye out for. So one red flag of pseudoscience is elevating anecdotal evidence, or using anecdotal evidence to support a treatment. So what I mean by that are testimonials plastered all over a practitioner's website, say. So they'll say that, just because Jonathan says the treatment works doesn't mean it's effective. That's why we need higher quality scientific studies like randomized controlled trials to actually show that treatments have a causal benefit. Anecdotal evidence only cherry picks the hits and it ignores the misses. And actually, in Canada, for Canadian psychologists, it's considered unethical for us to put testimonials on our websites because it's basically inaccurate advertising. So that is one hallmark of pseudoscience that people can look for. Another hallmark of pseudoscience, I would say, I think this is the most important one, and it's maybe the hardest for proponents of pseudoscience to contend with. It's the warning sign of what's called claims are divorced from the broader scientific literature. So what I mean by that is claims that run counter to the mountains of medical knowledge and body of science that we currently have. For example, no matter how many studies, quote unquote, that find a treatment effect for, say, energy healing or homeopathy, those treatments cannot work beyond the placebo effect. And the reason for that is because if energy healing were to work, energy healing purports to be able to change someone's human energy fields by manipulating and balancing them with our hands without touch. And the entire discipline of biology and anatomy doesn't find the existence of human energy fields, so it cannot work. Similarly with homeopathy. Homeopathy violates fundamental principles in physics and pharmacology because homeopathy uses the law of minimum dose to say that an ingredient becomes more effective when it's diluted out of existence, and that water remembers the memory of it. And so that, for homeopathy to be true, the way that it's pitched is divorced from the broader scientific literature. It just can't work. And so that is a huge hallmark of pseudoscience. Another hallmark of pseudoscience would be using sciencey sounding language to promote claims. So for example, if someone says that, say, homeopathy works by using quantum physics to change the intracellular structure of the membranes within our brain to alter the frequencies and the vibrations of the universe. See, what I just said is nonsense. It sounds good, it sounds profound, and it sounds sciency, but it's meaningless. And so that's another hallmark of pseudoscience that people can watch for.
Right. So I want to deep dive in Ayurveda and homeopathy because it is more prevalent in India. But before that, I want to cover the wellness industry in a general way. And a couple of days back, I read on Twitter only that to earn a fortune in fitness industry, either in diet or exercise, there is only one dictum: complicate to profit. The more you complicate, the better profits you will generate. So our health industry is full of supplements, new magic pills, new shortcuts, new quick fixes, new detox solutions. So I want you to demystify this wellness industry. What the incentives drive this industry? What funding of these companies are, funders of these companies like the board members are expecting the revenue from this health and wellness companies. So I want you to demystify the entire arrangement for our viewers so that they can, the next time there is a health company which is pitching their product to them, I want the people to look them from the incentive perspective.
Yeah, so the wellness industry is huge. Globally, it's valued at $5.6 trillion. So it is very, very big business. And it's largely unregulated and not tested for safety and for effectiveness. And so you're right that part of the wellness industry includes legitimate sources of health. So things like exercise classes, say. That's a legitimate part of evidence-based care. But it also includes the alternative medicine industry. And that's pseudoscientific treatments, that's unsupported supplements, as you said, that's health coaches or wellness consultants. It's people that don't belong to a bona fide health profession like a physician, doctor, psychologist, social worker, nurse. These are people that don't have valid credentials or training to treat somebody's health, but they say that they can do that. And so that is a very, very dangerous world because, again, that can be very harmful to people's health. The reasons for that and the motivations are very complex. There's lots of different reasons and drivers that underpin the wellness industry. So one is just, obviously there's a big financial incentive. People can make a lot of money. I could set up a supplement industry right now and say that and I would never do that because it's incredibly unethical, but I could say, take this supplement, as many health and wellness influencers do, and I could make a ton of money doing so, but I would have to throw my ethics out the window in order for that to happen. So there's that, but I think even more dangerously and more psychologically, that one of the biggest drivers is more psychological, social, and cultural. And that is because pseudoscientific beliefs have become baked into our cultures and into our societies. And at the individual level, people like those health influencers or wellness influencers can actually legitimately believe what they're saying. So they will actually believe that homeopathy or energy healing, to use those examples again, can treat depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, despite any science or evidence whatsoever. But if someone actually believes that, I think it makes them more dangerous because it makes them more passionate to push their products.
So speaking of specific influencers, Andrew Huberman, you might be knowing because of his cult-like following also. So I want you to wear the scientific hat and just demystify the pseudoscience claim or products he is giving his viewers to. Because the reason for asking this question to you is a lot of medical colleagues of mine are still, just because he is a good communicator, a good orator, they are lured into his belief systems, his propaganda machine and all that. So if this is the condition of my medical colleagues, I can't imagine what will be the condition of other non-medicos who are not into this scientific thinking. So I want you to know more about Andrew Huberman's content and also his product endorsement and all that from the scientific angle of yours.
There is, again, in the scientific literature, this idea called the Einstein effect. And it basically means that when we hear health misinformation from a scientist or a doctor, people are more likely to believe it than from a wellness
It is
guru.
authority bias, right? It is authority bias.
That's another name for it, yes, the authority bias or the Einstein effect, exactly. So, right, because people are more likely to believe if someone has. So this process is called motivated reasoning, which means someone, if they have a preconceived idea or belief that they want to find evidence for, people can find that anywhere on the internet. You could find evidence to support the earth is flat, evidence, even though that's not true. And you can find a PhD or maybe even an MD or a doctor who will support that idea. So that's number one, is that just because a doctor or a health authority, the health authority bias, says,
or Stanford.
Or,
I think the institution is also authority. I think.
And exactly, the institution can lend even more legitimacy or a veil of legitimacy, and that's not a good thing. So, yeah, number one, people need to be highly skeptical of those things. The other thing to be wary of is that when you get people with a huge platform like that who are talking about health topics that go beyond their scope. So, I won't get into too much details, but there were, Andrew Huberman was talking about cannabis the other day, and I can't remember all of the details, but several cannabis experts came out and tried to correct the information that was out there. And so that's sort of a risk. When people get very big, they start to push information about topics that's just really beyond their scope. And the way in which they might do that is, again, cherry picking studies or finding animal studies and then overgeneralizing animal studies to the actual to humans. And so that's another kind of a red flag to look out for. And then when you get people like, again, say Andrew Huberman, because you asked about him, I think that people can get confused because some of the things that he will say can be good. Like any wellness guru, they could be stumbling upon evidence-based principles. The problem is that when you get people that attain guru status, they'll say 2 or 3 things that are good and then 5 or 7 things that are just completely off the wall or cherry-picked and misinformed. And I think that can be very, misleading for people. So again, we really need to encourage people to be thoughtful and to be skeptical and to use valid, credible sources of information, and not just people, like not just a person, a doctor or an MD, but I tend to encourage people to use bodies of experts. So for example, in Canada or the US for mental health, that would be the Canadian Psychological Association or the American Psychological Association, who have a whole bunch of psychiatrists and psychologists that put out clinical practice guidelines and information sheets that are the accumulation of the current state of the evidence. It's not just one fringe expert talking about a topic that he's not qualified to talk about.
So speaking of influencers, I want your take. You have not mentioned this in your book. I just want, it is an off topic but a parallel topic only. I want your take on longevity, anti-aging, which is gaining a popularity of lately thanks to Brian Johnson and Peter Attia. So what's your take on this? What is the truth beyond the marketing hype and the trend hype?
I think that, again, longevity hype is huge, as you've mentioned. And I think that what it does is it capitalizes, literally capitalizes financially on our emotional vulnerabilities, because as humans, it can be natural and normal for people to fear getting old. And so lots of people want to stifle or stop the aging process. And what a lot of these health influencers do is they treat aging as a disease that needs to be stopped. And I think framing in that way is not helpful from a psychological perspective, because all of us get old and all of us age. And the healthy psychological approach to that is to embrace life's various transitions and all of the thoughts and the emotions and the life transitions that come along with that. Longevity and the wellness industry, again, capitalizes on those fears. And again, there's very, very, very little science to support the vast majority of their claims. So they'll sell a diet supplement or a diet protocol or a miracle cure that will be able to stop this. And the fact of the matter is, it's just not possible. No one's going to stop the aging process. So again, it really comes down to financial and emotional exploitation.
And speaking specifically of biohacking, what's your take on it? Is it a overblown marketing campaign, or what's the truth behind the this marketing buff?
Biohacking is a wellness buzzword. So again, it's
Yeah.
very
Okay.
very similar to longevity, in my opinion. Again, if you go to bona fide health professions, bona fide family physicians, health specialists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they won't talk about biohacking, because biohacking happens in the wellness industry. And again, it's used to, in the same way, to capitalize and to exploit our emotional vulnerabilities and to make financial gain off people. Again, that's not to say that these influencers don't believe it. I think they do believe what they're selling. That doesn't make what they're selling right and safe or effective.
I think it's a great business model, and I will still quote here Charlie Munger, the late Charlie Munger, rest his peace. His quote was, "Never think of anything unless you think of incentive." So there is a financial incentive involved, and there is a really good, fat business model involved behind this biohacking and longevity, if I'm not wrong.
I can just add a quote to that. It's by Derek Barris, who's a science communicator and a journalist, and he wrote a really wonderful book with co-authors Matthew Remski and Julian Walker. The book is called Conspirituality. So it's about merging far-right conspiracy theories with the wellness industry and alternative medicine. But the quote that he says is essentially, when it comes to a wellness influencer or anyone making a health claim, he says, watch what they say, then watch what they sell. So very similar.
Yeah, hits the nail. Yeah. So speaking of the last fitness influencer, I want to tie this with the pseudoscience propagator and anti-vax movement, which was taking a heat for last 4 years. So 4 years back, we were stuck in lockdown and this pandemic due to the COVID-19 virus. So due to that, there were a lot of fitness influencers, or I can say generalized influencers, celebrities, sports stars, who are propagating anti-vax or anti-vaxxers. We can say the anti-vaxxers terms only for the addressing these people. So in their core competencies, if I can name the exact sports star, I'm a big tennis fan. I'm professional tennis player also as a hobbyist, and I love what Novak Djokovic brings to the court. But his views on anti-vaxxing was just poles about his technical expertise. So there are a lot of these authority figures. We just mentioned this a couple of minutes back, that there is an authority bias. Just because they are good at one competence field, they are propagating another scientific claim and all that. Means if you want to influence by the Djokovic, it's better to be influenced inside the court, not outside the court. That's the best thing you can do. So there is a popular podcaster also, Joe Rogan, if I can say his name out and loud. He has a terrific communication skill or a podcasting skill. I think he's the best in the world. But when it comes to propagating science or pseudoscience, you know what I mean. So I want you to know, I want to understand the anti-vax movement. What was the scientific view from your angle?
That's such a great point, right? So we should not listen to celebrities and to podcast hosts who don't have a science background or a health background into this. But what those guys are doing is essentially they're just parroting anti-vaccine tropes again. It's part of the anti-vaccine movement has been around for a very long time, well over 100 years. And it's the same kinds of tropes or repeated ideas that we hear over and over. And it's very similar to the alternative medicine industry. And in fact, they're bedfellows. So again, saying things like vaccines are unnatural, or that they're more harmful than helpful, or that they cause problems like autism, which is just not true at all. We have good science to support that that's just not the case. Nevertheless, the anti-vaccine movement, and even the anti-psychiatry movement and the alternative medicine and the wellness industry, they use this narrative to sow fear and to, again, propagate their own misinformation and sell their own products. But at the end of the day, the anti-vaccine movement is a pseudoscientific assault on public health. It's not aligned with mainstream medicine and the body of scientific evidence that we have to support public health. And it's one of the most dangerous pseudoscientific assaults that we have, because people will literally die as a result of not getting vaccinated around the world. And so it's very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, celebrities and just everyday people can fall for misinformation and fall for the anti-vaccine movement's ideas for lots of different, again, complex reasons. But just because someone repeats that information doesn't make it true. And again, that's very, very alarming. And it's especially alarming given what just happened yesterday with the US election and Donald Trump getting elected, and him trying to, he said that he's made RFK Jr., he's going to put him in one of
exactly. I just want to know your take on this MAHA campaign, which is Make America Healthy Again campaign from Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
The MAHA movement is alternative medicine ideology going mainstream. It's pseudoscience becoming politicized. It's incredibly dangerous. It's not new. Again, these same ideas that every single health condition can be solved with diet and lifestyle change, which again, diet and lifestyle change are part of evidence-based practice, but there aren't a cure-all, and there aren't a cure-all for all health conditions. And it's really a Trojan horse, because the MAHA movement will pay lip service to lifestyle change, but then they will also switch and start to sell pseudoscientific treatments, like, again, what we see in the wellness industry and the alternative medicine industry. And it's even more dangerous than that, because in doing so, they undermine the mainstream healthcare systems that we have in evidence-based medicine, so threatening to take away vaccines and to, I don't know what they want to do, defund various agencies that help support psychiatry and virology. And so these are very dangerous times that we're living in, unfortunately.
Actually, did you notice the start point of this? Because Robert F. Kennedy was going on this podcast, he was showing his shirtless physique. I think he is on steroids for sure, given the age and also the body physique he is having and the transformation which he had. And I think there will be a lot of supplement selling from this only, because he will surely go into this anti-aging domain, that you eat this, you eat a carnivore diet, or you eat these supplements and you will get the physique which I had at this age. I think that would be the end case scenario, because that was the starting point also, if I'm not wrong.
Again, these ideas are very, very old. And it's in my book, I write in 1899, the year 1899, a guy named Bernard McFadden, who some consider the first health influencer, sold a magazine called Physical Culture, and he made millions of dollars of doing it in New York City. And he would, in his magazine, he would walk around shirtless and showing his physique, and again saying that diet and lifestyle and other pseudoscientific ideas were the cure-all. The problem nowadays is that social media has amplified all of this stuff. I think that's what's kind of unique to the era that we're living in. So that, again, back to that illusory truth effect, so much misinformation can be amplified and people are believing it, unfortunately.
I want to know the buzzword this alternative medicine or pseudoscientific practice is used. Like there is a detox word, there is a functional medicine word, there is a lot of what you say appeal to the nature, which you said natural, organic, close to the what you say the ancient past of our traditions and cultures. So just can you say the common buzzwords which you should use them as a red flags?
Yeah, there's so many common buzzwords that exist in the wellness industry to watch out for. One you already said, biohacking. That's a huge one. Another one is quantum. If anyone sees the word quantum attached to a therapy, you can be near certain that that's a scam. So people need to stay away from that. Toxins and detox are huge.
Detox, yeah.
Yeah, no one.
Can you just let us understand the details of this detox term, because there are a lot of liver detox, gut detox, kidney detox. What you say? There is every organ in the body has a detox therapy, if I'm not wrong.
Well,
so I want to know what this scientific truth behind this toxins and the detox thing, which has gained traction of lately.
well, the liver and our kidneys are our detox agents,
Exactly.
and if
they are the detoxing.
that is the only detox agents that we need. That's the legitimate. That's the true natural way to actually detox, is to just exercise, get adequate sleep, have adequate nutrition, and to be healthy in that way, because our liver and our kidneys are our detox agents. In the wellness industry, when you hear detox and toxins, they are fear mongering. They're saying things like there are 80,000 chemicals out in the world, and that my supplement or dietary protocol can help detox whatever scary chemicals or substances that you need to get rid of your body, and that your liver and kidneys aren't enough, that you need more, and this is the product that you need to do. And again, those are scams.
And I want to know about homeopathy also. What has made it more popular? What do you think are the common themes? What are the common propaganda made messages which are propagated by homeopaths, due to which there is a rise of popularity from German? I think there is the origin of homeopathy, right? If I'm not wrong, Germany.
Yeah. Homeopathy was invented. I think it was 1896 in Germany.
Yeah,
by
mid 19th century.
Yeah, by Samuel Hahnemann, and it's not consistent with modern medicine, because again, it goes off the law of minimum dose, which says that an active ingredient becomes more effective when it's diluted out of existence, and that just doesn't make sense. So what it really means is that homeopathy remedies are just water or sugar pills or alcohol, and it can be more dangerous than that because they can be cut with other adulterants and other things in there that could be actually harmful to people. But you're right, the rise of it's become very popular. It's a huge billion-dollar industry, even in the US. And so there's lots of different, again, reasons for that. Lots of different economic, psychological, social, and cultural reasons. And it's not good. We need people to be very skeptical of these things, because when they use homeopathic products, they're absolutely not helping treat any health condition whatsoever beyond the placebo effect. So people may, use alternative medicine treatments beyond homeopathy for the placebo effect, but we also use the placebo effect in mainstream medicine as well. It doesn't mean that homeopathic products are effective. So I think why they've become so popular is, again, back to the narrative and back to the ideology. People are fed misinformation, and there's very good advertising behind homeopathy, and people are led to believe it, and unfortunately it's misleading.
So if I can see a common place between all the alternative medicine practitioners or their approach towards the patients, there is one positive. Correct me if I'm wrong. Their approach towards the patients is more empathetic. There is a system of, if I'm not wrong, I had cleared my US MLs and I was about to enter US medical system, and I got to know that an average clinician or a physician spends roughly 10 to 15 minutes with the patient interaction, like taking the history and examining the vitals and all that. But when you compare that to an alternative medicine, it is a much longer time, and there is a more time for an interactive bonding between the patient and the clinician. In India, it is at poles apart, because in India, I'm a physician, I'm a practicing physician, and the average amount of time we interact with patients is roughly 2 or 3 minutes, because the volume is so much. The Indian patients are not getting time to interact with their doctors also, because the primary vitals measurements are taken by the nurses in the station, nursing station only. So by the time the patient enters the doctor, there is a really hardly, I think there is a 5 minute interaction time between the patient and the doctor. So do you think that affects the trust building of a patient towards his doctor? Because here also, in spite of the volume, there is a longer patient-doctor interaction in alternative practices. What do you think about this? How it impacts the trust between the doctor and the patient, and the way in which we approach the medical system?
I think you're exactly right. It's one of the things that, again, alternative medicine does well insofar as it allows, like when an alternative medicine practitioner spends more time with the patient, it allows them to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel validated, to feel understood. That can happen in the context of a pseudoscientific treatment, but those to feel seen and to feel heard and to feel understood, we know are very powerful treatments for health, and it helps with trust, and that's why people are more likely to believe them and to believe what they say. It is an absolute fault of mainstream medicine that our healthcare systems are set up in a way that we don't have adequate time for that. That said, there are some professions like mine, the mental health professions, where I, for example, will spend an hour with the patient doing psychotherapy. And we're actually trained to do that. We're trained to cultivate a therapeutic relationship with someone and to do psychotherapy. And so I think that's literally our forte. So I'll backtrack. I think Harriet Hall said it best. She was a physician. She unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But she said, what alternative medicine practitioners do that is good is not special. And what they do that is special is not good. And so what that means is that what they do that is good is the things that if physicians had more time and more resources and more funding to do, they could do that too, and probably better, especially the mental health professions, because we're trained at it. But what alternative medicine practitioners do that is special or unique is not good, because that's the pseudoscientific treatments.
Say for example, I had a friend of mine who had went for a homeopathic consultation for his skin disease. He mentioned that the doctor, interviewed him for roughly 2.5 hours. He had taken the entire history. So by the time he left the office, he had a sure trust in the doctor that whatever happens, he will do not harm. Because there is a bond which is formed when you interact with someone. Let's say we are interacting with 1 hour. There is a bond which we are getting. If we meet in person, if I come to Canada or you come to India, there will be a bond or a brotherhood between us. But if that happens between a clinician and his patient, there is a bias. There is a strong bias. The science goes out of the door, because when it comes to emotional trust factor, then people don't go into this scientific terms and all that. They just want the treatment, and they just want that pain or the disease to just vanish off. If I'm not wrong, just correct me here, please.
Well, yeah, and I think it really comes down to, again, the ideology of the clinician too, right? Because true bona fide health professions have evidence-based practice baked into their codes of ethics and their legal standards of practice. So we have to practice with science and evidence behind us. So that ideal is supposed to remove the bias for how we practice. That's what good clinicians do. You're right, though. If someone is a I'll call us, say, a pseudoscientific practitioner, or someone who is selling pseudoscientific treatments, they're already sort of biased, and I think that just gives them more opportunity to pitch their ideas, unfortunately, and that bond could probably make it worse, and make them believe it. But again, I think that even if evidence-based treatments, or family physicians, say in Canada, if they were given half-hour appointments with patients, from an ethical perspective, they would still, even forming that bond, they would still be obligated to evidence-based practice, and so they would still be obligated to provide the accurate information and the relative risks and benefits of treatments, and help patients decide from a scientific lens which routes to go down.
So if you have seen my channel, we are not getting enough views because there are a lot of people who are advising me that you are doing YouTube wrong. You should call an Ayurvedic expert, a naturopathic expert, astrologer, or what you say, a religious monk, so that it adds some spice in your content and it just sells better. So there is an incentive involved also. Means there are people who are financially incentivized and there are people who are socially incentivized. So I have put my moral and ethical code close to my heart, and I have means what you say, I have been away from these people for long, and I'm in this field for I think 4th year. This is my 4th year, and I have not done a single podcast with such people. But if you see, there is a social incentive which I am telling you. So how do you fight a traditional or a culturally strong belief system patient? There might be a patient who comes to you. He's a religious, I think, a religious Catholic, or religious Hindu, or religious Islamic, who has a pseudoscientific, what you say, Venn diagram. You can say that there is a religion here, there is a pseudoscience here, and they believe something which is effective in the mixture of the two. How do you approach such patients? I want you to know from your practice.
Good questions, and there's 2 parts there. So first, I want to commend you for not giving into false balance and bringing astrologers or pseudoscientific treatment providers onto the podcast, because we call that a false balance, and again, that can be a harmful thing. And so sticking to our ethics is great. You wouldn't interview a flat earther, say, or someone who believes that the earth is flat, because there's no evidence for that. It's the same with homeopathy. There's no evidence for it. When it comes, your question though is a very hard one, because it comes down to how do we do these things at the clinical level. The reason I wrote my book is because I wanted to reach people in a way that I couldn't do from a clinical perspective, because there's another thing that is baked into our codes of ethics and legal standards of practice beyond evidence-based care, and that's called cultural competency. And what that means is we need to find ways to respect, study, and incorporate culture and modify and sort of adapt evidence-based practice to ensure that patients are getting quality care. What that means clinically is that I need to attend to my own biases, my own beliefs, and my own worldviews and how that can impact patient care. And we also strive to understand, learn about the cultures and worldviews of patients, and we kind of meet in the middle of that. And so practicing culturally competent means doing those things. What it doesn't mean though is offering treatments that are opposed to evidence-based medicine. I would never provide a pseudoscientific treatment. So I can give you an example that I wrote in my book. So I treat people who have addiction concerns, and I'll just give this great example because it really impacted me as an early clinician. My patient was an indigenous woman, and she had a horrific abuse history, sexual abuse, physical abuse, and for lots of different reasons she became addicted to alcohol and crack cocaine. And so she's seeking help, and that's why she comes to our clinic. And so she was such a wonderful, wonderful lady, and very kind. But for me to practice in a culturally competent way, again, we kind of meet in the middle. I try to find ways that I would ask her about her community and her culture that in ways that made sense, and she would love to kind of tell me about that. And she had one practice that she would do called smudging. And smudging is sort of the burning of various herbs to spiritually cleanse. That's what she would do. And when she did smudging, she would feel more connected to her community, and she would feel like she's getting back in touch with her identity. And she said when she smudged, she would never drink or be intoxicated while doing that because it would be disrespectful to her community. And so in our treatment plan, we would, of course, find ways as one part of our treatment plan to maximize her smudging and have her do that as much as she can and to be part of her community and to feel that identity kind of come back to her. And so that is practicing in a culturally competent way. It doesn't mean that I'm doing the smudging with her, or that I'm advocating that smudging is a treatment, or I'm advertising that it's going to treat everyone's addiction and post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, etc. We're doing it in a way because it will help her feel connected to her community and her identity, and there's no false advertising about it, and it's one component of a larger treatment plan to help with her mental health and addiction concerns.
So I think you have to respect the patient's traditional and cultural rules in spite of not having the science-backed practices, right? If I'm not wrong,
yeah,
that's the code.
So that it's a delicate balance of finding these things and respecting. It's about respecting patient autonomy as well, and to choose. But here's the bugger, I guess. Here's the trick: is that the wellness industry and pseudoscientific proponents, so people that sell pseudoscientific treatments, they don't respect a patient's autonomy if they're not honest about their treatments in terms of the science and in terms of their relative risks and benefits. So if someone says that homeopathy treats post-traumatic stress disorder or addiction, they're not being factual with respect to the science. And if they tell a patient that, they're not respecting their patient autonomy, because patient autonomy means that a patient needs to be able to choose with accurate information. So that's not patient empowerment. It's quite the opposite. And so we can respect a patient's autonomy to choose, and I can say you're free to go use homeopathy elsewhere, but just know that homeopathy doesn't work beyond the placebo effect, and that there are other evidence-based treatments that are more likely to be helpful. That's the honest way of approaching homeopathy, and if someone wanted to provide it, that's what they would have to say, not that it can actually treat their health conditions better than evidence-based treatments.
I wanted to cover a topic which I mentioned a couple of minutes back, which was bro science. There is a lot of rise in gym culture, which is of lately due to the alpha man mentality and all that. You might be knowing it from a psychological angle, like there are a lot of people who have an insecurity, male insecurity, masculinity insecurity, and there are a lot of people who are abusing drugs in that domain also. Means they want to have a particular physique, they want to be more manly, if I can say that. So what's your take on this bro science? Because there is not a lot of authority bias there, because the people who are propagating this bro science have a good body, but they don't have the certification or the clinical registration which is required to have an influence on a gym goer, or what you say. So what's your take on this bro science culture?
Well, my friend and colleague Timothy Caulfield, he's a professor at the University of Alberta, he just put out a documentary on this very topic. It's called Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. And it talks about the intersection of what's called the manosphere, or kind of bro science, and the wellness industry. And like you said, it's a lot of these very social beliefs that have become pervasive in our culture about what ideal traditional men should look like, what men's bodies should look like. And then there are these various, again, treatments that don't have a lot of support at all. They're unsupported, or they're pseudoscientific, to make men's, jaws look more chiseled, or to look more, get an 8-pack or a 6-pack or whatever it is. And again, there's not a lot of science behind it. And it actually, a lot of the psychological literature shows that the extent to which people buy in to these very traditional masculine roles, that can essentially, and traditional masculine identity, it can actually be unhelpful for their mental health, because often these ideals are either unattainable or unrealistic, and the treatments that are being sold to do that, again, are out of reach. And so obviously exercise is great and eating well is great, but when you're hearing it from wellness gurus who are, again, selling you things with unsupported treatments, that's unhelpful. And again, it perpetuates this ideal of what it means to be a man in a way that, again, is probably psychologically not a helpful thing, because we know again from the literature that when men internalize those ideals, it negatively affects their mental health. They're less likely to be emotionally expressive and talk about their feelings, because all of those ideas are part of that masculine identity, say. And so it's a very complicated topic, and one in which is super important. So I'd encourage people to check out Timothy
Sure.
Caulfield's documentary.